Commanders quarterback Jayden Daniels will finish as the overall QB1 this year. That is just one of our several spicy takes on this episode of the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Here are your hosts, Marcus Mosher and Kate Madjuk.
Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. Welcome back. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. And joining me today, as always, is Kate Madjuk. You can follow her on Twitter at Kate Madjuk. You can also read her over at Yahoo Fantasy. On today's show, we are giving you guys three of our boldest, spiciest takes of the year, which you absolutely cannot hold against us when the season comes to end. We're not holding anything back, Kate. This is as bold as we're going to get. And why don't you start us off with a certain quarterback from the NFC East?
It's got to be Jayden Daniels, QB1 overall on the season. Now, I think everybody's kind of just penciling him in for a top 12 performance. I think right now he's floating right around quarterback 11 in expert consensus rankings over on Fantasy Pros for the 2024 season. But I've been saying it all off season long. If we are putting Anthony Richardson in the mix for QB1, why are we not doing the same thing for Jayden Daniels, who coming out of LSU, the Heisman winner, is a better passer overall. Yes, I said it. He's a better passer. And he's just as big of a rushing threat. Maybe not literally. He doesn't have quite as much, cushion for the pushing all around. He doesn't have as much bubble wrap and muscle around. But like, if you're saying that Anthony Richardson is a threat for QB1 on the year, you got to say it about Jayden Daniels. So here, I say it. Jayden Daniels, QB1 overall in 2024.
There's a lot of reasons why this could happen. And let's start with the offensive coordinator, Cliff Kingsbury, who I understand the flaws in Kingsbury, but some of the things that he's done, even back with Kyler Murray with the Cardinals, were really good. They're going to run a bunch of plays. It's going to be some easy throws, and it's going to give Daniels plenty of opportunities to use his legs and his athleticism to rack up the rushing yards. So I think Cliff is actually very good for helping a mobile quarterback maximize his athleticism. But what's really going to help Daniels is his defense, which really isn't much of a defense. I know Dan Quinn can work wonders. Exactly. He can work wonders. We saw him do very, very well with the Cowboys. This isn't the same talent level. Like, there's no Micah Parsons on that side of the ball. There's no Trayvon Diggs. It's a pretty rough group. It's probably the worst back seven in all of football. And you look at their schedule this year, playing the AFC North. It's going to be rough. Like, they're going to be in a bunch of these shootout type of games where he's going to have to, either run the ball 20 times a game. He's going to run 65, 70 plays. I do think there's an opportunity for Jayden Daniels to just rack up an ungodly amount of fantasy points. Now, how long couldn't he stay healthy? That's not really our concern for 2025 and beyond. I know this is a dynasty show, but your take is that he's going to finish as the overall QB1 this year. Kate, I can see it.
100%. This is already a team that led the league in regular season dropbacks just last year. And guess what? There's not much that changed in terms of the defensive personnel. Like you mentioned, they brought in Dan Quinn, who, in general, his philosophy is still going to be conducive to a higher play volume than most defensive-minded head coaches. But in general, I think, you're looking at, at least on the secondary front. I mean, do they have one of the smallest and most undersized quarterback rooms in the entire National Football League? I mean, that is going to be their Achilles heel this year, I think. And that is perfectly fine with me because that is just going to be more conducive to play volume on the other end.
I agree. Now, the talent level on offense outside of Jayden Daniels makes me a little concerned. Obviously, we love Terry McLaurin. We think he's going to be, I mean, he's just Mr. Reliable, Mr. Consistent. The number 2 wide receiver is not great. It's, Diami Brown is competing for that.
Hey, you know what's crazy? If nobody's open downfield, what's Jayden Daniels going to do?
He's going to run, which is
run.
Kind of what we're hoping for, right? Like we want him to rack up these rushing yards. I can see it, Kate. The hard part for me is the touchdowns because I think the rushing yards will be there. I think he'll have enough passing yards to get into the conversation. It's the touchdowns. And we did a study earlier this year looking at like what does the overall QB1 need to produce in order to get that spot. And it's usually somewhere between, what we say, 35 and 40 touchdowns. That's my concern. How does Daniels get that many touchdowns? Because if he only gets, 25, 26, he's probably not going to get there.
Yeah, I'm kind of banking on the rushing yard production here. I'm banking on a 10+ rushing touchdown season. Passing, it's hard to envision. But again, even when you look at the tight end position, Ben Sinnott, 2nd round pick for the Washington Commanders this year, a guy that we really like, checked all the boxes, productive in college, freak athlete, has the size, has a pathway to targets in year 1. Now, had some inconsistencies through the offseason in terms of his overall program. But again, kind of to be expected, right? And this stage of tight ends, and he's probably going to be one of these guys that, I think could be a factor here, maybe closer to the second half of the season. But again, you look for big, fast guy, middle of field, boom. And that could be Ben Sinnott. So yeah, outside of Terry McLaurin, big question marks, but I like him. I liked Luke McCaffrey coming out, who, again, one of these guys that switched positions in college and might have some untapped potential as a possession down receiver here in this offense. I'm not totally out. Yes, on paper, they're rivaling the Steelers, rivaling, a lot of these offenses that were the depth is not good, but they at least have some intriguing question marks, I think, that maybe aren't going to make it seem quite as bad as it feels, at least right now.
All right. So believe it or not, this is only one of our 3 spiciest takes, and they get spicier as we go on, Kate. Let's talk.
A nice ghost pepper.
Exactly. It just, starts off, hot, but then it just burns your tongue off. Let's talk about the Rams backfield and that punt returner for Los Angeles next. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel over the last couple of weeks, America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we have something a little different for you this week. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a free 3-week trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV base plan, you can watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. With me being, obviously, a Cowboys fan living in Pennsylvania, I've needed Sunday Ticket for the last 20 years to watch my team play, and it's been absolutely fantastic. I cannot say enough great things about having Sunday Ticket. I also love FanDuel. It's what I go to place all my bets every single weekend, including maybe some Jake Ferguson over 5.5 touchdowns this year. Pretty intriguing lines over there. Go visit FanDuel.com and download America's #1 sportsbook. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We want to let you know that the new Locked On NFL show is here. Locked On NFL is now 2 shows every single day. First, the madman Tyler Rowland kicks you off in the morning with a double shot of NFL espresso, and then stop by the barbershop with Tony Wiggins for some real NFL talk. Add in the Locked On local experts, and you get unprecedented NFL insight, hot opinions, detailed breakdowns, all in 30 minutes. It's the new Locked On NFL, and it's twice a day. Make the madman Tyler Rowland and the barber Tony Wiggins your second listen at the new Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. All right, Kate, spicy take, bold take number 2. I think Blake Corum outscores Kyren Williams this year. And
this is wild.
This is wild. Not sure exactly how it's going to happen, but I see multiple paths for it to happen. Number 1, Kyren Williams has just not been the most durable running back. Even last year, in his breakout season, he missed 5 starts that he missed because of an injury. This offseason,
just 12 games.
Yeah, this offseason already dealing with another injury. And now Sean McVay says they're going to be using him as a punt returner. I think that's just a way to try to get him more touches, but I just have some concerns that a running back of his stature is going to be able to hold up for all 17 games, which brings me to Blake Corum, who's another small running back, right? He's got a bunch of work on his body, right? Like the wear and tear is unbelievable after Michigan just used him up over the last couple of years. However, if you draft that running back, on day 2, there's no sense in trying to save him for his second contract. I think you're going to want to use him early on. Blake Corum is a NFL ready running back that fits perfectly into this Rams offense. I just won't be surprised if Blake Corum, who started off this camp as the clear-cut RB2, and by the end of camp was already rotating in with Kyren Williams, I just won't be shocked if we get into like week 5 and it's pretty clear, like, oh, Blake Corum's just the better pure overall player. Let's make him our RB1.
And like the two of them kind of can offer some similar play style. I think they they can be 1A, 1B just when you look at them on the play field. But the thing about Blake Corum is he is overall the better athlete of the two. So when you're looking at these two guys who I think, similar play styles overall, and then suddenly you realize like, oh, Blake Corum pops off the page a little bit. And that's not to say anything about Kyren Williams. He was the most efficient running backs in the National Football League last year. Like there is nothing bad you could possibly say about Kyren Williams and what he achieved over that 12-game span. The concern for me, Marcus, comes when I'm looking at all of the, we say to follow along with what the coaches are trying to tell us with their moves. So I go back to the NFL draft, and it really felt like the move for Blake Corum, who is a very pro-ready running back, right? Coming out, got a ton of work at Michigan, has elite vision, which I think like you've got to thank every one of those reps in that Michigan offense, which is a pro-style offense that he literally carried like all the way to a national championship. That was Blake Corum's national championship. Like, you have to look at him as this kind of immediate contributor who, yes, maybe because of wear and tear, might not be one of these guys that last 10 years into his NFL career due to that wear and tear. But like, he is ready to contribute from day one. He already has the vision. He has all of these pro-ready attributes. So when they made the draft pick, we're kind of like, okay, so they want to limit some of these touches, some of these unnecessary hits that Kyren Williams is going to have to take because, again, health has been an issue to this point in his career. So that made sense to me. I was like, okay, even if they get him in 40% of snaps, keep Kyren at like 60% of snaps, which last year he was well over 80%, like even that does Kyren Williams good. Right. But then the punt returner conversation comes into play, and I'm puzzled because if your goal with Blake Corum was to keep Kyren Williams healthy, then I don't think it makes all that much sense to be like, let's get him pummeled on punt returns. Like, what does that tell me about what Sean McVay is saying about like, is Kyren Williams dispensable in this offense? That might be taking it like 3 steps too far, but like, that's the question mark I'm asking myself is like, why doesn't Sean McVay want to protect him from these hits?
Yeah, and there's a couple other things I wanted to mention. We've seen, I think in most other situations, this would be Kyren Williams' job and Blake Corum would just rotate in. But we've seen Sean McVay be fickle when it comes to the running back position, right? Like Cam Akers would play really well and then all of a sudden would be phased out of the offense asking for a trade, right? Darrell Henderson would have a couple good weeks and then he would be released a couple weeks later, right? Like I remember us doing a show after week 1. Darrell Henderson played really well, and I think it was like 3 weeks later they cut it, right? Now, I think Kyren Williams is better than all those players, just to be clear, and I'm not saying they're going to cut Kyren Williams because they're not. He's clearly a very, very good NFL running back. But we've seen Sean McVay kind of have a wandering eye a little bit when it comes to certain players. And when you draft Blake Corum in round 3, and we know what type of person and what type of leader he is, it wouldn't be shocking to see Blake Corum get a chance to start over Kyren Williams at some point this year. And the last point that I want to make is I don't want to be a slave to draft capital either. But Kyren Williams was a day 3 pick who did nothing as a rookie, played really well in year 2, but got banged up, right? Blake Corum is a day 2 pick with, pedigree galore, right? I wouldn't be surprised if we just get into these games and Sean McVay says, hey, this is the better player. He's going to be our workhorse back.
Yeah, I think, another point to make. Yeah, Kyren Williams as a rookie played 10 games. Again, didn't really do much. Last year, played 12 games, got banged up again this year. Like, even if it comes into the season and they're in something close to a 50-50-ish split, 60-40 split in Kyren Williams' favor, we're probably, and again, this is just looking at the past precedent of the situation and of a guy who's about to be returning punts, which, can I just be clear? If there's one task that I don't want to do in the NFL, just to be clear, I'm not good at, I would not be a good NFL player. Shocker. Would I love to be like the punter? Yes. Would I love to be returning punts? That's the one task that I would be the most terrified to do, because you have gunners literally just shooting down the field at 22 plus miles an hour. Like, absolutely.
I agree. It's a scary job.
And they're gunning for your head. Like, that's terrifying. And like, if, Kyren Williams has another season where he plays just 12 games, that could be Blake Corum, lead RB for 5+ games. And I'm not so sure that when Kyren Williams returns that he gets the full job back as a starter. Like,
so here's our actionable advice here. Kyren Williams being drafted as RB6, Blake Corum being drafted at RB30. I'm not saying to just take Blake Corum outright over Kyren Williams, but at that price, I would absolutely take Corum over Kyren Williams. If you can flip Kyren Williams for a player at a different position at the same price, again, a couple of the players being drafted around him, Drake London, Brandon Ayuk directly ahead of him, Saquon Barkley, Rome Odunze, Devontae Smith being drafted behind him. Like, if I can cash in Kyren for Brandon Ayuk and then go get Blake Corum, I think you're going to be better off from that. I just have this feeling in my gut that when we get to the end of the season, it's going to be Blake Corum who finishes with more rushing yards, more touchdowns, and therefore more fantasy points.
And Blake Corum, I will say, is one of these guys that, like, maybe you want to hold on to Kyren Williams. And I think that's totally justifiable. I think you should sell high, but like, if you just want to hold on because you think when he's on the field, he's going to be RB1, more power to you. But like, if I'm especially not the Kyren Williams manager, I want to go and be trading for Blake Corum. I know sometimes it's nice to like get the insurance policy on your running back.
Yep.
But I think Blake Corum is a guy that I'm going to be targeting in trades before season kickoff, regardless of whether or not I roster Kyren Williams, because I just think the upside, should he have the opportunity to start, maybe amid an injury, what have you, like the upside for Blake Corum and a Sean McVay offense as the RB1 is far too great.
I agree. All right, okay, let's get to our spiciest take. If you thought that one was spicy, let's talk about the tight end for the Dallas Cowboys and what he is going to do this year next. This episode is brought to you by Gametime. Gametime is the absolute best way to buy your tickets for live events, including football games, which you'll be going to this fall. Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events faster and even easier than ever before. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only the incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to spend your valuable time searching through thousands of tickets. I absolutely love everything about Gametime. I love that they have the panoramic view of your seats, so you know exactly what your seats are going to look like before you buy. Plus, they have the lowest price guarantee, or Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. Plus, your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. This episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. What's something that you would love to learn? As an adult, do you make time to learn new things as often as you would like? Or was that lost in your childhood? Kids are always learning and growing, but as adults, sometimes we lose that curiosity. I would like to learn how to garden maybe a little bit better. Been thinking about taking a new language. Maybe you want to learn how to go golfing or bowling. Therapy can help you reconnect with your sense of wonder, because your back to school era can come at any age. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's done entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. All you have to do is fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch your therapist at any time for any reason at no additional charge. Rediscover your curiosity with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That is BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. Everydayers. On tomorrow's show, we'll have Matt Williams in here, and we're going to talk about some trade targets ahead of week one. Try to get those last-minute Dynasty trades in before the year starts. So make sure you tune in for that. But, Kate, let's finish up here with a guy from my team. As you can see, if you're watching with us on YouTube, got my CeeDee Lamb jersey on now that the best receiver in the NFL is signed. Hey, you ready for this spicy take?
I'm so ready. Give me that ghost pepper.
I think Jake Ferguson is going to outscore Travis Kelce, and I'm going to throw Mark Andrews in there as well. Two of the older tight ends. I think this is the year that we see a couple of these guys start to jump the quote-unquote older tight ends. And I'll make the case for Jake Ferguson. In year 2 last year, 760 yards and 5 touchdowns. But he didn't play a ton until week 3. The first 2 games of the year, 22 total yards, and then he was off. So 740 yards and 5 touchdowns over the final 15 games. And if you include the playoff game, so again, that's a 16-game sample size, you're looking at somebody who had well over 800 yards and 8 touchdowns. And that is as a year 2 player. Going into year 3, by all accounts, he's had an amazing training camp. He's locked and loaded with Dak. He worked out with Dak in Dak's backyard all summer long. They call it the Dak yard, by the way. That's where they practice.
Oh, my God.
And it's pretty clear that he's going to be the number 2 target in this offense. And why does that matter? The Cowboys in 2020, before Dak got hurt, number 1 scoring offense in the league. 2021, number 1 scoring offense in the league. 2022, in the games that Dak played, number 1 scoring offense in the league. And then, last year, number 1 scoring offense in the NFL. No Tony Pollard.
Marcus, as a Steelers fan, I feel like you're just kind of rubbing this in my face after watching Kenny Pickett for the last 2 years, but it's
Absolutely.
fine. It's fine.
This is the highest scoring offense in the league. Now, we can talk about the postseason stuff and it's whatever, but
I don't care about the postseason. We don't care about that stuff. Yeah.
even with CeeDee Lamb gobbling up like 200 targets, I still think Jake Ferguson could put up 1,000 yards and double-digit touchdowns. And if CeeDee Lamb were to go down for any amount of time, whether it's a 2-game stretch, a 4-game stretch, and knock on wood, the whole season, you're looking at Jake Ferguson leading this team in targets. The Cowboys have a history of the tight end producing under Dak. Bunch of touchdowns, whether it was Dalton Schultz or Blake Jarwin or Jason Witten. Jake Ferguson is primed for a massive, massive season in Dallas.
Just last year, Jake Ferguson outpaced Travis Kelce in yards per reception, yards after the catch per reception. Travis Kelce's another year older. He's turning 35. Yep. And guess what? Last year, Jake Ferguson had 1 fewer red zone target than Travis Kelce. He actually had 2 more end zone targets than Travis Kelce just last season. We've been talking about this all off season long, just our concerns about Travis Kelce being maybe a little bit more limited, not necessarily like physically, but I think the team will try to just utilize his snap and like availability as a route runner, blocker. I think they're going to be a little bit more selective of when they put him on the field because, again, they're going for that 3-peat. They want him to be available for the most crucial moments. So, like, maybe in week 1 against a high-powered Ravens defense, like, they're probably going to need Travis Kelce on the field a fair bit. But I could picture there being weeks where they just don't utilize him nearly as much when they're going up against some weaker opponents, like, you know, the Raiders, like.
Well, and I want to
like.
I wonder with the Chiefs, with the way they won the Super Bowl last year, where, you know, they played week 1, the wild card round at home, and then road Super Bowl. I just wonder how much effort they're going to put into the regular season. And that's not to say that they're not going to try, right? But like, are they going to really push themselves to try to win 13 games? Or if they're 10-7, are they fine? You know what I mean? Like, I just don't see Andy Reid and the Chiefs overworking Travis Kelce. On the flip side, I think the Cowboys are going to have to overwork Jake Ferguson because Brandon Cooks is older. He's in his 30s now, already dealing with a knee injury. No Michael Gallup. Jalen Tolbert's the only other receiver on the roster that has really done much of anything. It seems like Ferguson is going to get a lot of work early on this season.
And would you say that, like, I mean, obviously CeeDee Lamb held out this offseason. He's back now, but like, who was the best or who was like the primary beneficiary of the absence of CeeDee Lamb throughout this offseason? It has to be Jake Ferguson, right?
Yeah. And I can't even begin to tell you the trust that Dak has in Jake Ferguson. Jake Ferguson put on some more muscle so he could play more downs just for the wear and tear of the season. Luke Schoonmaker, who the Cowboys drafted in the 2nd round last year, has bulked up a little bit to be more of the inline blocker to allow Ferguson to be more of a receiver out of the slot. It's going to be one of these things, Kate, where the Cowboys play the Browns in week 1, and I expect the Browns to double CeeDee Lamb. I just won't be surprised if Ferguson's getting 8, 9, 10 targets coming out of that game. And it's like, here we are. We're ranking Jake Ferguson as a top 5 tight end after week 1 every single week going forward because the target quality is going to be good, regardless of what you think of Dak. I think most people think at worst he's a top 12 quarterback. And then, you know, you're getting 1 million targets. He's going to produce. He's going to put up big numbers.
Yeah. Jake Ferguson, wide receiver 2 for the Dallas Cowboys. I am all in. Be sure to, you know, let Marcus know what you think of all of his takes on today's show over on X. Cause I just can't wait.
Get used to calling it X, by the way. It's still Twitter to me. It'll always be Twitter.
It'll always be Twitter, but you know what? That is your place to come and tell us what you think of our ridiculous takes.
@Marcus_Mosher.
Yeah. Give us your bold predictions too, because I want to hear, like, we're crazy, and these last couple of shows, we really just, again, don't hold us to any of these takes. These are just us having some fun, but also, you know, like, telling you which players we're really bullish on this season who might be decent trade targets here. But I want to hear your takes too. I want to hear your funsy bold predictions.
Go check out the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available on all platforms. Make sure that you check out the new Locked On NFL show. 2 shows every single day. 1 with Tyler Rowland, one with Tony Wiggins. They are absolutely fantastic. Go follow Kate on Twitter at Kate Magic or X or whatever you call it. I'm at Marcus_Mosher, and we will see you right back here tomorrow.